Hello, and thanks for joining this hands-on demo for tiering to the cloud with the File Management Appliance, or FMA, and Atmos Cloud Storage. This is Frank Murphy with EMC, and over the next few minutes we'll see how this solution will address the challenges of explosive data growth. So, let's get started. What challenges are we seeing with unstructured data growth in file systems? First, there's lots of it. Whether it's created from social media and collaboration applications to high-performance R&D analytics, unstructured data is growing faster than ever and it's getting more difficult to manage. Also, over time that data often has little business value and basically gets stale quickly. And lastly, from the sheer size of what's often stored on Tier 1 NAS systems, this data is getting more and more difficult to back up successfully, where backup windows can be missed. File tiering to the cloud can help address these challenges by using policies to reduce the management complexity and overhead of maintaining all this content. And since 70% or more of this unstructured content is often static, automation can align business value to how that data is managed based on its use. And lastly, the sooner you start shrinking your overall primary storage footprint, the sooner your backup and recovery processes will improve, and you'll also lower your overall storage costs. So, let's see an illustration of FMA and Atmos together. In this demo, we'll see the solution through the point of view of two key groups in any sized company. On the left, we have end users. For our example, they'll be users that access content from two different SIF shares, one for marketing, one for engineering. And on the right, we'll see things from the IT admin's perspective. They're responsible for serving those files from, in this case, a fully virtualized DMC Solera, shown here at the top, which is connected to a fully virtualized FMA, shown here on the right, and both of which are networked to a private cloud deployment of an Atmos system. In this case, we'll use the Atmos Virtual Edition, which runs on any ESX compatible storage and is deployed here in two different sites but managed as a single cloud entity. So first up, let's begin with the foundation of the Atmos cloud. Then we'll see how FMA and Atmos work together with the Solera to reduce that primary storage footprint, which in turn saves cost, improves efficiency, and simplifies the life of IT and storage admins, and is also transparent to our end users. So again, let's start at the foundation here, and we'll log into Atmos as the system admin, or the sysadmin. And as a cloud architecture, Atmos is managed as a single entity, and from this console we can see a single pane of glass management into our entire infrastructure. And to give you a sense of how the physical components in Atmos are related to the logical construct of secure multi-tenancy, again a cloud architecture, from the system management console, let's drill down to the first of the two nodes, or resource management groups, or RMGs, in this configuration. So first, let's look at things from the physical perspective, the storage nodes. So, if you recall from the Atmos cabinet diagram a few minutes ago, the nodes can either be physical servers at the top of the appliance cabinet, or they're virtualized as virtual machines in ESX. They talk via SAS to back-end SATA disks inside the physical cabinet, or in the virtual edition, they talk to a variety of supported backends. Now let's look at things from a logical perspective in the concept of tenancy. Again, since Atmos is a cloud storage architecture, it's unlike traditional storage systems where LUNs or RAID groups or pools need to be configured before presenting them to a host as usable. With Atmos, all that provisioning is automated via policy and the various data services inside the product. So what actually gets provisioned is access to the system through this construct of tenancy. And this is where the sysadmin organizes those tenants using the nodes as the building blocks to physically separate and isolate customer data. Other options here include options to design storage personalities per tenant, whether they offer traditional file services such as CIFS, NFS, or IFS, or more modern web services such as the kind that FMA will use. So next up, we'll log into the tenant portal. In your private cloud type of deployment, depending on how you deliver storage as a service, this is where your application owners, department heads, or even business unit owners could log in on a self-service basis. So here we've created a global tenant and we called it Tenant A. And immediately you can see a very different perspective of our system. Since we're the tenant, we don't see any system management options like we did a moment ago, but more importantly, I don't see any other tenant information. So now inside of my tenancy, we've created several subtenants to continue to organize that data more granularly. So you can see several different subtenants listed here. Some we've dedicated to departments like engineering or marketing, and others we've tied to specific use cases such as a cloud drive for home directories. So first up, let's look at the engineering subtenant, which is what will be used by FMA. So as a web services-based storage target, the tenant doesn't need a mount point like a traditional NAS device. Instead, what gets provisioned is a subtenant ID, a user ID or a UID, and a shared secret. We'll see these three again in a minute. And that's it. With that information and a policy that automatically protects the data coming from FMA inside of Atmos, the storage admin is basically done with it. Set it and forget it. So back to our example. Let's move up the stack a little from the cloud tier and focus on the end user. Here's a typical culprit for unstructured data, a network share. It's often well over 70% full, and we can see a mix of different file types, mostly static content. I've already run an FMA policy against this directory, but to the end users, my only indication of that, if I even notice, is this little clock symbol on the icon. That means the file's been tiered off of the primary storage tier onto Atmos. And now let's take a look at how we did that. So now let's see that tiering process end to end. This time from the perspective of a different set of users, from files hosted from the same Solera, in this case with the marketing business unit, let's call it. So here again, unstructured content, marketing materials, different than our engineering materials. So in this case, let's say press releases. So again, now we're looking at things from the user perspective, and again, it's still very much of a familiar user experience. It's their work product. They have read, write, execute privileges over this content. It's still very much their experience in their work product. We can go and look at, let's say, one of the attributes in one of these files that has yet to be tiered, and here we can see the size and the size on disk, same parameter. So there it is, sitting out there on Tier 1 NAS infrastructure, and that's actually part of the problem that we're going to solve. So now we'll shift gears a bit and look at behind the scenes inside of FMA from the IT admin or the storage admin's perspective. So really inside of FMA, right, first and foremost is the configuration tab. In here we define our file servers, sort of sources and targets of where we want that content to go. So here we're going to define our basically point FMA at our Solera, give it some basic credential information, set up the callback or pass-through settings if we like. Also pointed to NetApp ONTAP filers from here as well, same sort of source support. And here on the Atmos side of the house, we're going to look at our properties. And one key thing to point out here is the concept of, when we were looking at multi-tenancy and the tenant information, this is where you take that information from Atmos and plug it into FMA. So that's it for configuration. The next tab we'll go ahead and look at inside of FMA is the Policies tab. That's effectively going to govern those business rules and automate them and apply them to that unstructured content. So first up, we're going to look at one of the policies that created that initial condition we saw when we came in, which was the engineering share. So here what we did is we configured a policy and we said if documents or objects in this repository are larger than a certain size and they haven't been accessed in a certain number of months, tier them off. Get them off of that expensive high-end Tier 1 NAS infrastructure. That's how we created that earlier condition. Now we'll go ahead and look at the Schedule tab, effectively what has happened in the past. Here we can see the source of where that engineering share is. We go back and look at the output of a previous task. We can see some of the basic properties, how many files were available to be archived or tiered off. Again, that's looking backwards to see what has happened in the engineering share with that last policy run. Now we're going to go ahead and look at what we're going to impart now for that unstructured content on the marketing share. So we'll go ahead and kick off that job and let that cook. That's going to go out, hit the share on the network, apply a policy for that kind of unstructured content. Again, this is a marketing group, so effectively think of it as a completely different SLA, and the two are mutually independent. So that job is done. I'll drill in and look at the details of what happened for that job. Here I can see the summary if you want to, and I can see at a glance what's happened, how many files got tagged, what the directory path was, the total size that went out to be tiered. I can drill in and look at the log file if I want. But for right now, let's go ahead and look at sort of what happened behind the scenes there. I'll go ahead and look at the policy for marketing. Again, completely separate SLA, completely different sort of work process, if you will. Think marketing, so a much higher turnaround of content than when something like a press release is done. Typically the content is no longer needed. So now let's go over and look at what's going on in that marketing share again. So again, like we saw a few moments ago, the user experience, very familiar. My content out on the share, collaborating with my coworkers, what have you. I go back to look at that one document that I was working on, and again, user experience, very similar. Double click on it, up it comes. I can modify, change, view, what have you. Let's close that. And one key thing to point out now that the job has run is I go back and look at these icons, and now they've been flagged just like they were on that engineering share when we first started the walkthrough here. And now the ones that fit that criteria, that business rule of over 2 weeks of a definition of what's stale content or unused, untouched content, get it tiered off to the cloud. So not all of them fit, and that's fine. That's the flexibility of the policy engine. But as I go down and look at an individual document that we looked at earlier, and now again, after the policy has been run, I look at its size and the size on disk. The size on disk is much smaller, just 8K. That's what we call the stub, effectively the pointer of where that binary large object, the blob, actually lives in the cloud. But again, from the client's perspective, this could even be an application writing to that object. Very transparent. So let's kick it up a level to the share itself. Here we can see the size and the size on disk. More than half of a reduction. So again, from a single policy run, you can take that kind of paradigm and scale it out completely across your NAS infrastructure, or make out certainly several other intelligent choices about when you want the policies to run at a threshold, scheduled interval, what have you. You can really leverage that policy engine to get the content tiered off. First of all, identified, and then tiered off to the cloud tier, and then you can then leverage the goodness of the policy engine inside Atmos, which distributes the content across nodes, protects it. You could even put it on spin down disks if you like. Again, several different options over there to leverage that policy goodness and work hand in hand with the policy goodness inside of FMA. So in other words, these two policy engines give you the ability to reclaim that storage in a simple and efficient way, automate your business value, take the pain and hassle out of the backups and recoveries, and at the bottom line, lower your overall storage costs. So again, to take the next step on your journey, you can head on over to emc.com and either search on the keyword FMA to find out more about EMC FMA, or go to emc.com/cloud to learn about the Atmos family. And you can also get free evaluation copies of either product, the virtual edition of FMA or the eval edition of Atmos, on our community page shown here. And thank you for your time.